All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I give all glory and honor and praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Racha, HaKodash, Barakatham. Give honor to my apostle, Great Millstone, and citation to the four corners, pushing this truth and sincerity. I love diligence, respect, fear, and trembling. As I tell someone with another given spirit of knowledge, coming back to the spirit and power of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai. Pray I hope this is edifying. It's locking. I pray I hope this is edifying to the hopeful elect. And we're going to get into some history today through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shai concerning the assimilation of the Israelites. Okay. Our heretics being stripped and basically beaten up out of us. Okay. Under the Greek Empire. Now, you had Israelites who, well, let me say this. During Alexander the Great's rule, he didn't beat the Israelites into submission. You know, we were still, sacrificing on a temple, sacrificing in the temple, and keeping our, uh, keeping our customs. Now, what happened was that wicked root that the scriptures speak about, or that little horn, which is Antiochus Epiphanes, he is the one who took away our daily sacrifices, which is he came and destroyed the temple. Okay, and that was the basically the destruction of Jerusalem at the time. Okay, and this is the reason why when you go into the scriptures and it speaks about the Greeks and things like that, is because it was a history prior to the Roman Empire. It was a history prior to Yahushai and the disciples and the letters that was being handed out. Okay, it was a history of people scattered, which are the Israelites, or they're called them Gentiles or uncircumcised because they were brought up in other customs. They were called Greeks. They were called Gentiles. They were called uncircumcised. Okay, so we're gonna get into the history of the little horn or Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, before I start, I'm gonna go into this book, and this is the book that I was going into. This is the Antiquity, the New Testament and Antiquity. Shalom. All right, so when you go into this book is going to explain the history that took place before the Roman Empire. Okay, so first and foremost, let's get. You know what? First, let me get this precept real quick. Um, let's see. Yeah, this is let's see if you can put it on the screen. This is 2 Timothy 2 and 15. It says, to study to show thyself approved unto the Most High, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to divide the word of truth. And this is what your theological schools is not taught. This is, you see, you have these guys like Vocab Malone, or this new dude by the name of Justice, Justin, whatever his name is. Okay, you apologists, you Baptists, you fucking Seventh Day Adventists, all you different denominations. Y'all are not taught when you go to them damn demonic ass cemeteries um, that there's history. You know, you never taught that there's history of the Bible. You only taught love and feel good doctrine. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna get into the history of it. Now I'm gonna start from page 18. And it's called Recreating the Context. It says, what basic elements are necessary if we are going to be diligent in building this context of antiquity? Three important elements contribute to rebuilding the New Testament context. Every interpreter of the New Testament must have some mastery of each. So there's three elements of understanding the New Testament. One element is knowing the land. Okay, knowing the land plays a very big part of understanding what's going on in these regions. Because knowing the land, you have to know um, um, who lives there, when was they brought there, what, and this is why Paul understood to send epistles to Ephesus, to send epistles uh, to the Corinth, to Rome, Peter to the Israelites, to the strangers, Pontus, Cappadocia, Galatia, Pamphylia, and things like that, because it was a history of that land on who was in that land, which was Israelites. In fact, just to back up my point, let's get this real quick.
Christianity, we'd have an epistle of Paul to the Ethiopians, an epistle of Paul to the Egyptians, an epistle of Paul to the Hutus and the Tutsis. We don't have that. There's no epistle of Paul to the Arabs. There's no epistle of Paul to the Babylonians.
Exactly.
There's no epistle of Paul to the Edomites.
You're right.
Paul could have very easily perverted.
So the part of knowing the land plays a big part in understanding the antiquity that took place in the New Testament, because you had the Israelites that were scattered out there. So this is why, let's go real quick. This is First Peter 1:1. It says, Peter, an apostle of Yahushua HaMashiach, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. Okay, so he's sending these epistles to the strangers in these regions. Now, when you go into the Hellenistic period, right, you're going to see that those lands were Hellenized. You see, they go Galatia, they go Bithynia, Cappadocia, the kingdom of Pontus, Parthia, Judea. Where we at? Yep. Pergamon, Armenia. So these lands in these areas were Hellenized during this rule. So when you get these scriptures like this, Peter, an apostle of Yahushua HaMashiach, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. Understanding the history of that land, you would know that you had Israelites in that land, in those regions. Okay? Now let's go back and listen to what he's saying.
Edomites.
You're right.
Paul could have very easily perverted Christianity.
Right. And
the Paul bashers are just idiots for not seeing that.
And of course, in other books, Paul definitely says that the Edomites are vessels fit for destruction.
Of destruction, right.
He does not include them among the Israelites.
And he doesn't include any nation that's non-Israelite.
Right.
Every one of those people Paul wrote an epistle to were dispersed Israelites.
Right. And he excludes the descendants of Ishmael, which is your today's Arabs, right?
Absolutely. He excludes them explicitly. Paul is
In the New Testament, Paul says in Romans 11, all Israel will be saved. That is the purpose and plan of God. There is a Christian kind of popular doctrine that I reject with all my heart, and that is that the church has replaced Israel and the promises of God. It's called supersessionism. I don't believe in that. I think that, honestly, hate to say this, but I honestly think it is a latent form of anti-Semitism to say that. You can't tell me that God made promises in the Old Testament to his people Israel concerning his future kingdom and salvation, and that he would give them a new heart and a new spirit, and he would write his laws in their heart, and they would be saved, that he would be their king, and they would be his people, and all those kingdom prophecies. You can't possibly tell me that God didn't mean what he said.
See? All those kingdom prophecies. So they just broke it down to you. And these is Edomite scholars, man. They just broke it down to you that those epistles were to the Israelites that was scattered. Okay, but we're going into the aspect of the history. Okay, now let's go back. Let's go to. Okay, I read Peter's. Okay, you know what? Let's just go back here. Bring it back to me. So I'm gonna read this part one more time. It says, "What basic elements are necessary if we are going to be diligent in building the context of antiquity?" Context meaning with the scriptures or with the pages. Okay. Three important elements contribute to rebuilding the New Testament context. Every interpreter of the New Testament must have some mastery of each. So it went over the land. You got to know what the land is. Now, the history. You got to know the history of that land. Knowing the history, you will know what king or what ruler is over that history. I mean, in that area. Who was there first? Okay. What people was replaced there in that history? You know. So why is it the name that is named? What culture is over that history? You know, what ruler dominated and what religion did he bring? You know, and that's what happens when you go into taking down kingdoms. You take you take an empire down, and you flood that empire with all of your beliefs and benefits and way of life. And that's what happened in the Mediterranean world. Okay, so now check this out. It says, now I'm gonna jump to knowing the history. It says the New Testament period also had a history that everyone knew. The coming of the Hellenistic culture behind the armies of Alexander the Great impacted Jewish life far more than we could imagine. Okay, so how did it impact Jewish life? Because instead of calling themselves Israelites, they were calling themselves Greeks. Okay, that's why. Instead of following after the law, statutes, commandments, they were uncircumcising themselves to be a part of that current society. Okay, so that's how it impacted. It impacted by them forgetting the Most High and basically being a flesh in the cauldron in that era, being a part of that way of life. It says this was followed by a series of regional Greek kings who sometimes encouraged assimilation, but at other times brutally oppressed the Jews. So we're going to get into the encouraging of assimilation, right? And when you go into the history, like I said, King Alexander the Great didn't right off beat the Israelites into submission. That was Antiochus Epiphanes. He encouraged assimilation. So let's see what assimilation is. Assimilation. In anthropology, psychology. I'm sorry. In anthropology and sociology, the process whereby individuals or groups of different ethnic heritage, your heritage was taken. Actually, let's go into heritage. What is a heritage? Let's go into the basic definition of a heritage. A property that descendants to an heir, something transmitted by or acquired from a predecessor, a legacy, something possessed as a result of one's natural situation or birth. Yep, but the law, statutes, commandments, that's our heritage. The sacrifice, the covenants, the promises. Okay, that's a part of our heritage. All right, we go back, exit out. So it says the process whereby individuals or groups of of differing ethnic heritage or are observed into the dominant culture of a society. See? Observed into the dominant culture of society, which in this instance is talking about the Greek Empire. The process of assimilating involves taking on the traits of a dominant culture to such a degree that the assimilating group becomes socially indistinguishable from other members of the society. Okay? So you couldn't tell a difference from an Israelite or the difference from a actual Greek. This is why you go into First Corinthians. What is that? First Corinthians 12. This is why Paul said this to them. This is 1 Corinthians 12 and 2. Ye know that ye were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led. See? Ye know that ye were Gentiles. Okay? You were Gentiles. You were a part of you were basically a part of another nation once upon a time. Okay? You were taking the customs of the heathens. Ye know that you were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, even as you were led. And this is speaking to who? This is the Israelites. To prove that, let's go to 1 Corinthians real quick. 1 Corinthians 1 and 1. 1 Corinthians 1 and 2. It says, unto the church of the Most High, which is at Corinth, to them that are sanctified in Hamashiach Yahushai, called to be saints, with all that in every place call upon the name of Yahushua Mashiach our Lord, both theirs and ours. So who is called to be saints? Who are the saints? Psalms 50 and 5. Gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. So who had a covenant with the Lord by sacrifice? You had the Israelites, beginning with Abraham. Okay. And what was that first covenant? Was the establishment of the circumcision. Let's see. Psalms 105 and 5, it says, remember this marvelous work that he hath done, his wonders and judgments of his mouth. O ye seed of Abraham, his servant, ye children of Jacob, his chosen. He is the Lord, Yahweh, our power. His judgments are in all the earth. He hath remembered his covenant forever, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations. See? Who is that covenant? Which covenant he made with Abraham and his oath unto Isaac, and confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel for an everlasting covenant. Saying, unto thee will I give the land of Canaan, the lot of your inheritance, which is the land of Israel. Okay? So the covenants, the promises, they're all to Jacob. Okay? The saints are the Israelites, those that made a covenant with the Lord by sacrifice. So when you go into Corinthians, that's who it's speaking about. Unto the church of the Most High, which is at Corinth, to them that are sanctified in Yahushua HaMashiach, called to be saints. So when you go to 1 Corinthians 12, you know who the saints is, who these letters was going to. Israel, ye know that ye were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led. Why? Because you are assimilated. It says, as such, assimilation is the most extreme form of acculturation. Although assimilation may be compelled through force or undertaken voluntarily, it is rare for a minority group to replace its previous culture practices completely. Religion, food, preferences, proximics, the physical distance between people in a given social situation. But check what it says. It says it is rare for a minority group to replace its previous culture practices completely, religion, food preferences. So it's rare. It was rare for them to go back to their old ways, go back to the law, statutes, commandments. Because guess what? When you go into Maccabees, because they were shamed. They were shamed of calling themselves Israelites. Where is it? Maccabees. I think it's 6:6. Yep. It says, neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Sabbath days or ancient feasts or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. See? So they couldn't go back to their practices. It was very rare because they were being slaughtered. Now, this brings in Antiochus Epiphanes, man. Okay. Now, you know what? Before I get there, it says they were forced or undertaken voluntarily. Let's get First Maccabees 1 real quick. Because you had Israelites that voluntarily did the shit, voluntarily took a hold of those customs. And then you had others who was beaten. Okay. I'm gonna get straight to the point. Well, this is some history right here. Well, let's get here real quick. Just real quick. I want to hit on the voluntarily. It's First Maccabees 1:1. In those days, you know what? Can't do it like that. Let's go up. It says this is 1 in Now, when you go into First Maccabees 1, this is a direct link to Daniel the 8th chapter. I'm gonna start from here. It says so. This is Maccabees 1:7. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule everyone in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied on the earth. Okay, now this is after Alexander the Great. You had 4 generals, which is Cassander, you had Lycomachus, you had Seleucus, and you had Ptolemy. All right, Cassander controlled what? The west, because he dominated Macedonia, right? Then you had Lysimachus, I believe that's how you say it, who took on Thrace and parts of Asia Minor, which was all Hellenized. That's what Cappadocia, Pontus, Phrygia, and all all over there, which was Hellenized, and that's the north. Then you had the Seleucid Empire, or Seleucids. He controlled Syria, Israel, Mesopotamia, and that was the east. Okay, so knowing what Seleucus is very important. So Seleucus was the east, and then you had Ptolemy. Ptolemy ruled Egypt and southern Syria, okay, which was the south. And that's very important, and I'm going to tell you why when you go into Daniel, the 8th chapter. So those are the 4, the ones that put crowns upon themselves. Now, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the Great, or Antiochus the King, which was known as Antiochus the Third, which is Antiochus the Great, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. So this is the kingdom of the Greeks. And I believe, I'm not mistaken, that's 175 BC. All right. The 137th year is 175 BC. When you do the history. So, verse 11. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. How did they depart from them? What is it speaking about? It's speaking about that the known world was Greek, was Hellenized. So doing the customs of your heritage, like this went into and said, it was very hard and rare for them to go back to their customs because the way of life, the Greeks took over. So the whole way of life would be nothing but of heathen customs. So they said, for since we departed from them, we had had much sorrow. They couldn't really. It's just like today. You gotta have your license. You gotta be a part and do something to advance in the society. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people who were so for herein, were so for herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen. Now check this part out. And made themselves uncircumcised. See, they made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. So you had Israelites deliberately wrapping the foreskins back into their rod. Okay, I forgot the name of it, but they used a string and some and rocks, and they tied them at each end, and they basically pulled the foreskin back on themselves. See, and made themselves uncircumcised. That's why when you go into Ephesians, the second chapter, it says, Wherefore, 2 and 11, wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh. Why does it say in the flesh? Because that's dealing with the actual circumcision, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called circumcision in the flesh made by hands. Because the fight was in the New Testament, the Jews that knew that they were Israelites, it was keeping the law. They had a problem with the Israelite foreigners who never was who wasn't born into the law. So they called them Gentiles. And you know, Timothy actually was born knowing that he was an Israelite through his mother, right? But what happened? He wasn't circumcised. So what was told to him? You got to make sure you get circumcised. Okay. In fact, they tell you that Timothy's mother was a Greek. Let's see. Yeah, Acts 16. It says father was a Greek. Yeah, so it says then Acts 16 and 1, then came to Derbe and Lystra, and behold, a certain disciple was there named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Jewess, right? She knew she was an Israelite. She was, and believed. So she believed the truth. But his father was a Greek, okay? And his father was a Greek because his father was taking place in the Greekish world, which was fell reported by the brethren that were at Lystra and Iconium. He would Paul have to go forth with him and took and circumcised him because of the Jews which were in those quarters, for they knew all that his father was a Greek. His father was a Greek, which was because he was in those customs. So what did they say? If you coming back to the statues, you got to get circumcised. If you believe, you got to get circumcised. That's what was the big fighting back and forth of trying to get the Israelite foreigners to hold on to all the laws and stuff, you know. So now you understand Maccabees, it made themselves uncircumcised because they were actually not circumcising their children. Okay. You had some that was actually deliberately doing it, and we're gonna get into it. Some was actually forced into not doing it, or they was to be killed. Okay. In fact, let's look up some. Let's. Mm, all right, check it out now. It says First Maccabees 1:16. Now, when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt that he might have dominion of 2 realms. Okay, now I'm gonna stop there. Let's get into this Daniel 8 real quick. Daniel 8:8. Therefore, the he goat waxed very great. That he goat is Alexander the Great. Okay, that's the he goat. Let's go to 21, 8 and 21. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. So the rough he goat is the Grecian king, which is Alexander the Great, and underneath him came his 4 generals. So let's go back. Therefore, the he goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven, which is Cassander, Lysimachus. Cassander ruled the west, Lysimachus ruled the north, Seleucus ruled the east, and Ptolemy ruled the south. Okay, so verse 9. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land. Now we finna get back into the Apocrypha. So he said he went to the south, to the east, and toward the pleasant land, right? And the pleasant land is Israel. Verse 16. Now this is First Maccabees 1:16. Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have dominion of 2 realms. Who took over Egypt? The Ptolemies had rule over Egypt. Okay? And he fought against Ptolemy. Let's see if I can find. Boom. Here we go. So you see, Asia Minor, Macedonia, Egypt, Syria. Okay? So Ptolemy had the south, which is Egypt and parts of northern Syria. Okay, so he said, okay, now this is going to be the fighting between Antiochus Epiphanes and a Ptolemy. And the first Ptolemy was actually Ptolemy Soter. This Ptolemy, who had control of the south or Egypt, is Ptolemy Philometor. This guy. Okay, Ptolemy Philometor, Macedonian king of Egypt. Okay, and you can look up the history on him. So he wanted 2 realms, which is the south and the east. Okay, which is an Apocrypha. Now check this out. Now remember, he said that and toward the pleasant land. Now this is what's going to bring in the daily sacrifice and being done away with. It says, and it waxed great, even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the hosts, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. How was the daily sacrifice taken away? And we're gonna get into that. And an host was given him, against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Okay. So him taking down, so him casting down the sanctuary and the daily sacrifices ceasing. Now check this out. It says, wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude of chariots and elephants and horsemen and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt, which was Ptolemy Philometor. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got the strong city in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof. And after that, Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in 143rd year, and went up against Israel in Jerusalem with a great multitude. And around this time period, it was like 168 BC. Okay, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see what I got in my notes. Yeah. Yep. 168. So let me see. Slakia. I know it's a lot of reading. Antiochus has smitten. Okay, yeah. So verse 20. Okay. Verse 20. And after that, Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude. This is the prophecy right here. See, this is the prophecy of Daniel. When he said he took, after he took down Egypt, he went to Israel and toward the pleasant land, which is Israel. And the host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced it and prospered. And this is what this devil did. Okay, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof, and the table of shewbread and the power vessels and the veils and the censers of gold and the veil and the crowns and the golden ornaments that were above the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having a great massacre, and spoke very proudly. Therefore, there was a great mourning in Israel in every place where they were, because the daily sacrifices was taken away. They were being destroyed. They were being assimilated. Okay? They were being assimilated. And this is why, going back to this precept, not precept, but going back to the book, it said, this was followed by a series of regional Greek kings who sometimes encouraged assimilation, but at other times brutally oppressed the Jews. So they were brutally oppressed. Okay, and this is the reason why you have the controversy of the Gentiles and the Greeks in the New Testament, is because throughout generation, it was a history of Israelites sticking to those customs. Because let's say 80 years ago, their great grandfather and mother was killed. So what happened? They was brought up under the Greek fashion. Okay? In fact, since I said that, it was brought up under the Greek fashion. Hold on, you know what? Now check this out. Now I went to page 26. Now this is under the Hellenistic period. All right. Hellenistic period. It says, while the conquering empires of the East permitted the Jews to retain their cultural and religious identity, the coming of the Greek culture or Hellenism in the 4th century made an indelible mark on Jewish life, which is basically they made a stamp that was so basically impact that was so hard to erase. That's what that word indelible means. Okay, let me look it up. Let me. It was like a stamp that was it was hard. It said it was hard to erase. Let's go to that word indelible. Okay, there we go. Impossible to remove, erase, or wash away, permanent. Um, it says making a mark not easily erased or washed away, unable to be forgotten, memorable. Right? How was those things memorable? Because they was kicking Jake ass, man. Okay, and they assimilated them. So the daily sacrifices being taken away, Jake was getting their asses beat. Okay. Uh, yeah, real quick. Well, you know what? Let me finish. Put this back on me. Finish this a little bit more. It says, while the conquering empires of the East permitted the Jews to retain their cultural and religious identity, the coming of Greek culture, or Hellenism, in the 4th century made an indelible mark on the Jewish life. Greek culture was missionary by nature, sweeping up new peoples and converting them to a new modern way of life. Judaism soon found itself enticed to join the wider Mediterranean world. See that? Because they were beat into, and then on top of that, it was prophecy. That ultimately the prophecy said that the daily sacrifice was going to be taken away. Okay, and that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. Let's get let me do it like this. I can. Um, I'm gonna skip down here. You can go ahead and read it. He was destroying Jay. Hold on, you know what? Because he came in peaceably. I'm gonna just start from 25. It says, therefore there was a great mourning in Israel in every place where they were, so that the princes and elders mourned, the virgins and the young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. It was a great slaughter. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion, which was ashamed. Okay, which with shame. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collectors of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came into Jerusalem with a great multitude. Now they putting them under their submission, taxing them now. Took the land over, assimilated it, and now they're being taxed. And spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city and smote it very sore and destroyed much people of Israel. See, and that goes into what is that, Daniel 8? And through his policy he shall cause craft to prosper. Okay, so I want to go down. Here we go. I just want to get certain parts. It says, verse 35, they stored it also with armor and victuals, and when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there, and so they became a sore snare. For it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Israel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled it, insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them. Whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her. and her own children left her. Her sanctuary laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into reproach, her honor into contempt. As he had, what is that? Let me look. Oh, okay. It says, as he had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellence was turned into mourning. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. This is the daily sacrifice that's being taken away. This is why Jacobs called themselves Greeks. For the king had sent letters by messengers into Jerusalem and into the cities of Judea that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbath in the festival days and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. So they started worshiping other idols, man. This is why this says this. This is exactly why 1 Corinthians 12 and 2, ye know that you were Gentiles carried away into these dumb idols, even as you were led. And this is the reason why. So when you go into Ephesians, now you understand. Wherefore, remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called circumcision in the flesh made by hands, that at that time ye were without Hamashiach, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without the Most High in the world. Because of why? Because they wasn't keeping a Shabbat, they wasn't sacrificing upon the altar, because they would be killed. And then it further tells you that the women, if they circumcised their children, they was going to be killed. Yep. Now the 15th day of the month of Casalu in the 145th year, 15th year, I think, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and builded idol altars throughout the city of Judea on every side. Okay? And burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law, which they found, they burnt them with fire. And wheresoever was found with any the books of the testament, or if any consented to the law, the king's commandment was that they should be put to death. See? So you got to know the fucking history to understand why when you go into the scriptures, it says neither Greek nor Jew. Because at that time it was bringing in all of the brothers. Okay, bringing them back to the fold. Colossians 3 and 11, whether there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond, nor free, but Hamashiach is all and in all. Let's go into that word Greek right there. Because when you see Greek, it's the same as calling them Gentiles. But you know what, better yet? You know what I can get? I can get John. Check this out in John 7, right? John 7 and 33. It says, John 7 and 33, then said Yahushua unto them, yet a little while am I with you, and then I go unto him that sent me. Ye shall seek me and shall not find me, and where I am, there ye cannot come. Then said the Jews among themselves, whither will he go, that we shall not find him? Will he go into the dispersed among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles? Because see, the history that was known was that you had Israelites amongst the other Gentiles. Okay, let's see. NLT, the Jewish leaders were puzzled by this statement. Where is he planning to go? They asked, is he thinking of leaving the country and going to the Jews in other lands? Because it was known that it was Jews in other lands. Maybe he will even teach the Greeks. The NIV, the Jews said to one another, where does this man intend to go that we cannot find him? Will he go where our people live, scattered among the Greeks, and teach the Greeks? You see that? Will he go where our people live, scattered among the Greeks? The Jews said to one another, where does this man intend to go that we will not find him? Does he intend to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? Go to the Jewish people dispersed among the Greeks and teach the Greeks. Okay? So there you have it. In fact, let's get one more precept. Let's get one more precept. Let's see. Before we end it, Second Maccabees, I believe it's 4. Yep, right there. So, all right, now I'm gonna read. I'll jump to page 32. Okay, so it says in 175 BC, following the murder of Antiochus III, which is Antiochus the Great, okay, which is the father of Antiochus Epiphanes. His son Seleucus IV, his second son Seleucus IV, gained the Seleucid throne and worked to consolidate his rule. In Jerusalem, he joined the tradition. In Jerusalem, he joined the tradition of his predecessors and accepted the bribes of men who desired to be high priests. And we're going to read that. Soon, Hellenites like Jason and Menelaus were running the temple of the despaired of the priestly families. So you had Israelite priests, okay, who was taking bribes and deals from Antiochus Epiphanes, okay, and they were help furthering Jake to be a part of that fashion, okay, to be a part of that way of life. Antiochus' presumption reached new heights when he assumed the title Epiphanes, which means the revealing of the Most High on earth, because he thought he was a god and sought to be worshipped. Antiochus Epiphanes worked to increase his hold on Egypt as well, but there he encountered the Romans in 168 BC, right? That was during the fighting. Antiochus returned north, shaking and humiliated, and turned against perceived ethnic minorities that might weaken his slipping position. Jewish leaders witnessed his defeat in Egypt and attempted a rebellion. Antiochus viewed Jerusalem as a rebellious, and on his return from Egypt, sacked the city, tore down its walls, and looted the temple. and looted the temple treasury, which that's what you just read in First Maccabees, okay? He made decrees prohibiting temple festivals and circumcision. See, this is why Timothy wasn't circumcised, okay? And it became illegal to possess the scriptures. It was illegal to possess the scriptures, and as well as getting circumcised, man. So this is why they called them Gentiles in time past. Okay, this is why when Timotheus came on the scene, he wasn't circumcised. So rightfully so, the Jews was basically the elders were saying, no, he got to get circumcised because that's a part of the law. Okay, it says the worship of Greek gods became mandatory, and soon festivals for the god Dionysius could be seen in Jerusalem streets. In the winter of 167 BC, the temple was turned over to the worship of Zeus, and for 3 years, pigs were sacrificed by Greeks on Israel's holy altar. In Jewish eyes, the temple had been desecrated. That's the history. That's the history. And I'm going to get more of that history. Now, that's from this book. Okay? I didn't write that. Slacky. Okay? So, let's see. Maccabees. Let's go back into Maccabees. Okay. Okay, I showed you this, right? Okay, Greeks. Okay. Where we at? Oh, you know, I might as well show this too, right? This is why you have this. Acts 6:1. And in those days, when the number of the disciples were multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. Okay, so the Grecians, okay, you know what? In fact, let's go here first just to see what Grecian is. And then we'll look it up in the other Bibles. Grecian, Hellenistas, which is what? One who imitates the manner and custom or the worship of the Greeks and use the Greek tongue. Used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands speaking Greek. This is why in the beginning of this lesson I spoke about one of the key contexts of understanding the New Testament is knowing the land. Okay? Used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. Okay? Let me go to Acts real quick. Acts 2:5, right? When it says, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Okay? Now let's see where they came from. Because remember, these were the Israelites who knew that they were Israelites, but they were in other countries. And a lot of those lands were Greeks, were Greek lands. Okay, so I'm gonna just skip and just go into the places there was at. Parthenia and Medes and Elamites and dwellers of Mesopotamia. And we know in Mesopotamia, okay, was I was about to say colonized, was Hellenized. And in Judea, yep, and in Cappadocia and in Pontus and in Asia. Okay. Phrygia, Pamphylia, in Egypt, and in parts of Libya, Cyrene, and strangers of Rome, Jews and proselytes. Cretes and Arabians, we do hear them speak in our tongue the wonderful works of the Most High. So when you look at these lands, I already went into this. The Hellenistic period, you see some of those same areas: Bithynia, Galatia, Cappadocia, Pontus, Armenia, Judea. See, Judea. Look at that. So Judea, right? It says during the Hellenistic period, Judea became a frontier region between the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemaic Empire. Okay, that's when you go into Daniel 8, they were fighting over these areas. And therefore it was often the front line of Syrian wars, changing hands several times during these conflicts. Under the Hellenistic kingdoms, Judea was ruled by the hereditary office of the high priest of Israel, which is the big ass sellout ass Levites, as a Hellenistic vassal. This period also saw the rise of the Hellenistic Judaism, which first developed in the Jewish diaspora of Alexandria and Antioch, and then spread to Judea. The major literary product of this culture syncretism is the Septuagint, translation of the Hebrew Bible from Biblical Hebrew and Biblical Aramaic to Greek. And the reason of the production of the translation seemed to be that many of the Alexandrian Jews had lost the ability to speak Hebrew and Aramaic, so they had to translate it into Greek. This is why you get this. When they wrote King of the Jews, what did they write it in? Luke 23 and 38, and a superstition also was written over him in the letters of Greek and in Latin and in Hebrew. This is the King of the Jews. Why did they have to write it in Greek and Latin? It's because it was a part of the dominant fucking language. Okay? That's it, man. All right. Now let's speed read this, and I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna end the lesson. Where we at on time? Okay. So this is Second Maccabees 2:7. But after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes took the kingdom, Jason, the son of Onias, labored underhand to be high priest, promising unto the king of intercession 303 scorn of silver, and of another renewed 8 talents. Besides this, he promised to assign 150 more if he might have license. Okay, that's part of that history and culture. Besides this, he promised to assign 140 and 50 more if he might have license to set up a place of exercise and for the training up of the youth in fashions of the heathen. See, to be trained up in the fashion of the heathen, man. And to write them of Jerusalem by the name of Antiochians. So they were calling themselves Greeks, calling themselves Antiochians. Which when the king had granted and he had gotten into his hand the rule, he forthwith brought his own nation to the Greekish fashion. See that? He brought his own nation to the Greekish fashion. And this is why you see in the scriptures it speaks about neither Greek nor Jew. Okay? And it's just really that simple. You know? Throughout the Greek Empire, the Israelites were Hellenized. Okay? They were beaten into submission. Okay? That's what took place. That's why when you get into the New Testament, it was fightings between the Gentiles, okay, and the actual Israelites, because they wasn't born up into the customs. That's all it was. Okay? Those are all Israelites. They are not fucking Edomites. Okay? Those are Israelites. According to the scriptures. Those are Israelites. So with that, I give all going on and praises to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Kakadash Brakathum, Double honor to my apostle, great millstone. Salutations to the Octagon pushing this truth with sincerity, love, diligence, respect, fear, and trembling. I pray and hope this was edifying. Shalom.